Getting a moose selfie? We have just a moment for a moose selfie. By the official con photographer, no less. Taping and streaming team, are we ready to go? Oh, I see a thumbs up. That's awesome. So our next presentation this afternoon is a legal defense fund for hackers from Harley Geiger and Charley Snyder. Please give them a warm Shmoocon welcome.
Hello, Shmoocon. So I'm crushed to hear that this next year is going to be the last Shmoocon, but I just wanted to say that I'm really grateful to Heidi and to Bruce for all the work that you've put in to bringing this community together, and all the staff also that keeps Shmoocon going. I hope that next year is not the last year and that it continues forever after that, but no matter how it turns out, thank you. So we're here today to talk with you about a legal defense fund for hackers. This is a community resource. It's not theoretical. This is operational now. And we are here to make a bit of news on a couple of fronts tonight. I'm Harley Geiger, and I am an attorney with the law firm Venable LLP. I work on cybersecurity law and policy. I help manage security incidents and compliance. I help cybersecurity companies with their policy and legal matters, and I coordinate the Security Research Legal Defense Fund.
Hello. That was loud. My name's Charley Snyder. I lead security policy at Google, and through several stops in my career, I've had the benefit of working on vulnerability disclosure issues from both the policy and the operational perspective.
Okay, so the Legal Defense Fund.
So let's get into it. Why are we here? What problem are we trying to solve for? So first and foremost, this is an initiative about protecting security researchers and security research. I don't think this group needs a ton of background on the problem we're trying to solve for. I bet many people here have faced legal threats in the past. Some of you might have been sued before. Some of you might have even been arrested before for hacking activities. Earlier in my career, I helped start and run the Pentagon's bug bounty pilot, and one of our top reporters, I think he was a top 3 reporter, was someone who had run afoul of U.S. computer hacking laws in the past and went to federal prison for it. And having served a lengthy stint in federal prison and coming back and signing up to help the U.S. government find bugs and ultimately improve our security, I think was pretty brave. And the reality is that ethical hackers do have valid defenses against a lot of these legal claims. But oftentimes, they don't have access to good legal representation, or they don't even really know where to start. Next slide, please. And it's not just the researchers that lose in this situation. I mean, this creates ecosystem-wide impacts. Software vendors and ultimately users, all users, lose when researchers don't feel comfortable coming forward to report vulnerabilities. A chilling effect on reporting vulnerabilities can lead to a lot of fires that we need to put out in the wild. Bug collectors benefit when hackers can come forward and engage on an equal footing, so you can have a full and frank exchange of information to get to the root of the problem. And you can't have that if you have the threat of litigation or worse hanging over researchers' heads. And so ultimately, with more legal certainty, we can have that deeper conversation, we can get more reports, we can have more chances to fix bugs and solve more problems. Even at Google, I see researchers come to us and report on occasion bugs in other companies' technology. And the reason they do that is because they're afraid. These companies don't have good reputations on security and how they treat vulnerability disclosure issues. So researchers don't want to come to these companies, even though they're trying to help them. So the ecosystem has a lot to lose when we don't have this free feedback loop between hackers and software vendors. Next slide.
So legal defense for good faith security research or ethical hacking has progressed a great deal in the past 5 years or so. we saw a specific defense for security research under Section 1201 of the DMCA, which is one of the U.S.'s main anti-hacking laws. We've also seen the Department of Justice additionally announce a charging policy whereby their prosecutors will decline to prosecute good faith security research for acts of good faith security research following that same protection under Section 1201 of the DMCA. Companies around the world are starting to adopt coordinated vulnerability disclosure programs. The U.S. government has led the way admirably in having all civilian agencies adopt coordinated vulnerability disclosure programs. But there are still major sources of liability. Right, so Section 1201 of the DMCA does not protect you for trafficking in vulnerabilities or exploits, which could mean just making them public. The charging policy that the Department of Justice issued only applies to the criminal law, but you can be sued under CFAA as well. And states have their own versions of CFAA, many of which are broader even than the CFAA. And there's no such charging policy for any of the states with the sole exception of Washington State. Thank you for your service. So still out there, we are continuing to see, despite that progress, a chilling effect. We're continuing to see legal threats, despite the growing amount of defense and acceptance of the hacker community. So I founded the Security Research Legal Defense Fund in 2023. Google provided startup funds to establish that fund, or the organization, and Charley here and Tim Willis from Google deserve a great deal of credit for that. They also deserve credit for not trying to control the organization. Google does not control the Security Research Legal Defense Fund, and nor did they seek to. The Security Research Legal Defense Fund is a standalone organization. It is a nonprofit, and the mission is to advance the public interest by providing financial assistance for legal representation against threats to good faith security research and vulnerability disclosure. Basically, we help hackers pay for their lawyers when they get threatened. And as you heard Charley and I talking about, these threats can manifest in a variety of ways. We've seen it where a government entity violates free speech, arguably, by seeking to shut down a conference presentation about vulnerability disclosure, about disclosing vulnerabilities. A company can threaten to sue researchers, even though those researchers have one of those defenses that I described earlier, authorized access to the computer or a defense under Section 1201. But as we've seen, even if the threats are bogus, even if the people bringing the threats would lose in court, costs a lot of money just to be able to get that on paper, just to be able to get to the point where you are defending yourself against these claims. And most researchers don't want to spend all their money on lawyers, which is surprising when I found out. But it's true. Now, the first bit of news that we want to announce here tonight about the Security Research Legal Defense Fund is that it was recently recognized by the IRS as a 501c3 public charitable organization. That's a big deal. Anybody can establish a nonprofit, but to be recognized with that C3 status as a charitable nonprofit is in fact an official acknowledgement by the U.S. government that this mission does in fact benefit the public. The IRS sends you a letter and says you are indeed performing a charitable service by helping good faith security researchers with legal assistance for good faith security research. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how it works. The defense funds can provide grants to the ethical hacker's attorney, not directly to the researcher, but to the ethical hacker's attorney. We do operate internationally, not just in the United States. And the defense fund may provide a grant when the grant would go towards representation in a legal matter related to good faith security research. So not other matters, like we won't help you with your very legitimate dispute with your landlord. Second, there has to be some sort of financial need. The security researcher does not have to be completely indigent, but at the same time, the purpose is not to be defending, a very large corporation. And third, the board approves the grant. So there is an independent board. I'll talk about that in a second, and that there is how it is done. So it is an evaluation by the board for these factors. The financial need, and whether it's good faith security research. Now, we use existing legal definitions for good faith security research. We do this because it is in line with U.S. law and is to help ensure that we are benefiting the public. So that definition is derived from Section 1201 of the DMCA. It's like this obscure copyright matter that has become like the cutting edge in hacker protection. But that definition is roughly that it is performed for the purpose of good faith testing, investigation, or correction, or disclosure of a security flaw or vulnerability in a manner designed to avoid harm to individuals or the public, and the information derived from that activity is primarily used to secure the devices or machines or the users of the devices or machines on which that software operates. So that is the definition that we use. These are the 3 board members that make the decisions on whether to provide a grant. That is Jim Dempsey, Kurt Opsel, and Amy Stepanovich. All 3 of them are highly qualified, just renowned experts in law, security, and ethics, and I personally admire them very much. They are also not employed by commercial entities. I coordinate and administer the fund, but I myself do not vote on whether to issue a grant. So I want to point out 2 additional facts for why this is important. So first, just as a general matter, we, and increasingly the U.S. government, agrees that it is important to protect independent good faith security research. This helps to provide a backstop against the silencing mechanism that a bogus legal threat can provide. This hopefully gives more confidence to good faith security researchers to come forward with their good faith security research and not necessarily have to capitulate to bogus legal threats. But the second thing is that there's a flip side to this, which is that this is also an incentive for the hacker community to act ethically. The defense fund only helps good faith security research. So if you commit extortion, if you unnecessarily violate privacy, if you act in a way that is reckless and that harms people, or if you're deliberately harming people, then you are not performing good faith security research, and the defense fund will likely not help you. I say likely because that is ultimately up to the board, but if it's not good faith security research, it's not arguably within the mission of the fund. So if you want to be eligible for community help, then you need to act in the best interests of the community. So here's the second big piece of news that we wanted to announce tonight. The Security Research Legal Defense Fund is issuing its first grant to researchers at Dragon Sector. They gave us permission to talk about this publicly, but these agreements were signed literally hours ago this afternoon. We've been kind of shooting language back and forth for a little bit, but it is now official. A few weeks ago, representatives from Dragon Sector in Poland reached out to the Security Research Legal Defense Fund. They told us about their research into train software and that they discovered that the software was artificially shutting down trains. It was a backdoor into the software. Dragon Sector was very quickly threatened with lawsuits because of this research, and they engaged an attorney, a well-known attorney in Poland. And the defense board met, reviewed their application, decided that it was good faith security research, saw that there was a financial need, and approved the grant. We've heard from DragonSec, they've authorized us to say publicly that they would have had to think twice about whether they were going to disclose this research at all if they did not have some ability to pay for legal assistance to deal with these threats. The Security Research Legal Defense Fund is going to be issuing these grants over coming weeks to help provide them with funding for legal counseling on their security research and their vulnerability disclosure.
Yeah.
This is a big deal in my opinion, right? This is something I mentioned the Security Research Legal Defense Fund to Jeff Moss at DEF CON. He goes, "Oh, that's been tried before. We're doing it. It's happening. It is operational. We're issuing grants. We've got the 501c3 status. It is up and running. It is now a community resource available to all of you."
So, yeah, sure. Keep it going. So before we were talking about setting this up, I think we had kind of speculated or kind of hoped that if we created this resource, it would actually never need to be used, because the existence of a legal defense fund might serve as a deterrent to organizations that might want to intimidate or threaten researchers. Now, unfortunately, we just crossed that Rubicon, which is exciting for the fund, but in some ways unfortunate. So our first call to action is to kind of build that deterrent. So first call to action, please evangelize this, share it with your friends. Let's raise awareness that this resource exists for hackers, and raise that awareness both amongst the hackers as well as those who might seek to intimidate. The second call to action is a pretty simple one. It's a legal defense fund. That means it needs funds. So if you are a researcher and you're feeling flush, you're feeling philanthropic, or perhaps you have some employment terms that restrict you from accepting bounty payments, consider donating. And companies should consider ways to donate as well. And I can't say that this is breaking news because we've announced it before, but if you're a Google bug hunter, you should especially consider donating. And if you do, Google will quadruple that donation. And we would, thank you. We would encourage other companies to do the same. Thank you. We'd encourage other companies to do the same. Ultimately, this is a resource by the community, for the community, to defend the community. So let's spread the word and make sure it's well-resourced.
Yes, fun fact about how IRS rules work. Lest you think that we can simply rely on Google's generosity, which I want to again say the fact that they are not trying to control the organization is to their credit. They're doing this for the community. But you cannot rely on donations from a single source. That's the way that 501c3 rules work. So this really does have to be something that will be sustained by the community or not at all. If it is not, provided donations by the public, then that is how public charities no longer are able to function. So it really is up to the community, which has been calling for things like this. It's been calling for legal defenses and to stop bogus lawsuits for some time. It is now up to the community to see what we will do with it. And that is our talk. We have 5 minutes for questions, if anybody has any. Yes, sir.
So how many people have you supported thus far?
So I announced our very first grant tonight. That was our first one, yes. So the question was, how many people have we supported so far? And that was our first. I will also say that we have received other inquiries since then. Literally last night, there was somebody who said, I wish that I knew about this, told us his story, and he would have been a great candidate for the Defense Fund. But we are just now announcing our very first, and we only got our status recently. Applying for 501c3 status from the IRS often will take many months. We have just reached the end of that process, so we are just now operational as a public charity. Other questions, please? Yes?
If a security researcher goes through this program and then come to find out, follows another issue, a different vulnerability, different company, and it needs support again, is it just a one-off, or is it an opportunity for them to back between it? What's the...
So the question was, if a security researcher finds a vulnerability and goes through the grant program once, and then finds a different vulnerability and wants to go through it again, is that the same program? Is it a one-off? I think ultimately that's going to be up to the board that will make that decision, but my guess is that the answer is that they will simply have a separate application for a separate grant. The grants are not intended to be open-ended. It's not like access to a bank account or something for your security research. It is a cabined grant for this act of security research for which you're facing legal threats. If another act occurs, then that is what is being defended, not a single researcher kind of throughout time. Yes, please.
How can people donate to the fund?
So right now, the best way to donate to the fund is to visit one of these fine websites that you see here on the screen, and there will be an email address there. Shortly, we hope to have an electronic means of donating directly from the website, but frankly, the email address that's there will come quickly to myself, and then we'll be able to work it out. Yep. Way over there. Yes, so the question was, are we following some sort of a standard or some sort of a definition for good faith security research? The answer to that is yes. So what we are following in the Good Faith Security Research Defense Fund is the definition of good faith security research, which we are deriving from U.S. law. So presently that definition appears in several places, including the exception for security testing in Section 1201 of the DMCA. It also appears in the Department of Justice's charging policy for the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The reason that we chose that particular definition is because it is in line with U.S. law. It is an officially recognized definition of good faith security research. I recognize that there are other definitions out there, and tomorrow, in fact, there's going to be a panel on whether there should be a code of practice for security research. But for now, that is the criteria that we're going on because that's one that is enshrined in law. To my right there with the hat. Turnaround time from application to hearing back was the question. Historically, we don't have a ton of history yet, pretty new organization, but the inquiries that we've received, we've responded pretty quickly. So the initial response has been in a matter of days. When we first started, there was a glitch in the website that has been fixed. It's been a matter of days, if not hours, now more recently. From application to the actual grant takes a little bit longer because you have to go through that approval process with the board. There are agreements that have to be signed on both sides, and importantly, we do our due diligence with the security researcher. So I didn't even mention this, but one of the things that we do is we run the security researcher's name as well as their attorney's name through the OFAC list to make sure, to the extent that we can, that these are individuals who are not under sanction, because that is not what the Security Research Legal Defense Fund is trying to do. So to the actual provision of the grant may take a little bit longer. It kind of depends on the circumstances. But for the initial inquiry, you should hear back pretty quick. Yes? The question was, have we or will we talk to the bug bounty programs to make this diversion of funds to enable them to donate easy? That's a great idea. Yes, we're doing that. But it's going to be up to them. I mean, in many cases, they have a couple of them at least have a single charity that they donate to for like a given year. And so there are a lot of charitable priorities out there. But yes, it is something that we are discussing. And I'm being given the big stop sign, so we'll be around. We'll be lobby conning. Thank you all so very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.